What if the information we've been hearing all this time about the fourth Novaflare batch turns out to be wrong and completely inaccurate? Yep, today we're discussing an update that's honestly pretty shocking. But before we get into the discussion, running out of Stellar Jade and Honkai starrail? Don't worry, there's a more budget-friendly solution. Now you can top up in-game safely, quickly, and at a lower price through U7 Buy. And it's not just Honkai starrail, other games are available too, all in one place. Still not sure? No problem. You can check U7 Buy's reviews directly on Trustpilot, so it's transparent and trustworthy. For comparison, 80 oniric shards cost around $100 in the official store, but on U7 Buy, it's much cheaper. The process is also instant. Just select your server, enter your UID, and the balance is delivered straight to your account, no hassle. Don't forget to use code BOOM for a 5% discount. Click the link in my description or pinned comment to visit U7 Buy. Alright, so in today's video, we're going to talk about a very surprising update that could potentially change our expectations regarding which characters will receive buffs in the upcoming 4th Novaflare batch. Yesterday, we finally got to watch the version 4.3 special program, and one of the biggest announcements was the official confirmation from Hoyoverse regarding Fate Collaboration Part 2 featuring Gilgamesh and Rin. What did you guys think about the special program? Personally, I thought it was pretty incredible, especially after finding out that Gilgamesh will be distributed for free to all players. However, today we won't be discussing yesterday's special program. Instead, we'll be focusing entirely on the 4th Novaflare batch. As usual, all the information discussed in this video comes from sources considered fairly credible. So without wasting any more time, let's jump straight into the discussion. Before we get into the latest updates, it's probably a good idea to briefly refresh our memory regarding the previous information about the 4th Novaflare batch so we can properly compare it with the new leaks we're about to discuss. Around 3 weeks ago, when we first covered this topic, the information came from Rain Grace. According to them, 4 characters were expected to receive Novaflare buffs: Topaz and Numi, Fugue, Lingsha, and Jiaoqiu. This information became even more convincing when, on May 19th, a much more reliable source, Sakura Haven, shared the exact same lineup of 4 characters previously mentioned by Rain Grace. Although the original source used by Sakura Haven was still an anonymous leaker, the fact that Sakura Haven chose to repost the information naturally gave it much more credibility. With 2 separate sources pointing toward the exact same conclusion, it was perfectly reasonable for many of us to feel fairly confident about that information at the time. However, the situation changed just a few hours ago when new and updated information regarding the 4th Novaflare batch appeared from a different source. And what makes it even more interesting is that several details are quite different from what we previously knew from those earlier leaks. This latest information comes from Full Stop Chan via HXG Leaks. According to their post, the 4 characters receiving buffs in the 4th Novaflare batch will be Sunday, Topaz and Numi, Jiaoqiu, and Argenti. And if we compare this with the previous information, there are indeed some similarities. Topaz and Numi and Jiaoqiu still remain on the list. However, there are also 2 very major differences. Fugue and Lingsha are no longer included, and their places have instead been replaced by Sunday and Argenti. Naturally, this is a pretty significant change and immediately raises questions regarding which version of the leaks is actually more accurate. Alright, let's start with Sunday and why his presence in this Novaflare lineup honestly isn't that surprising if we trace back previous leaks. In reality, Sunday has already been mentioned multiple times as a potential Novaflare recipient long before Full Stop Chan's leak appeared. One of the earliest mentions came from Galaxy Leaks, where their source was also anonymous. In that older post, Sunday was reportedly going to receive Novaflare alongside Firefly, Seal, Huahua. Although that particular Novaflare batch eventually went to Welt instead of Sunday, The fact that Sunday's name kept appearing in Novaflare discussions isn't exactly new. Additionally, Luna had also previously teased rather implicitly that Sunday would eventually receive Novaflare at some point in the future. With this kind of history behind the leaks, the idea of Sunday finally receiving Novaflare in the 4th batch honestly feels fairly believable. However, the thing I personally find most interesting is this: why Sunday? Because if we look at the current meta situation, Sunday is still a very solid character and remains widely used by many players, even if he's no longer considered the absolute strongest option and often functions as more of a second choice. In other words, Sunday hasn't really fallen into the outdated category the way some older characters have. So what exactly would motivate Hoyoverse to prioritize Sunday for a Novaflare upgrade? One particularly interesting possibility worth considering is his connection to Himiko Nova. As we've discussed previously, Himiko Nova is rumored to require Astral Express members as teammates. And naturally, Sunday qualifies as one of those Astral Express members. If Hoyoverse truly plans to position Sunday as one of Himiko Nova's best-in-slot teammates, then giving him a Novaflare buff would actually be an extremely strategic move. And honestly, we've already seen a similar pattern before. Sparkle received Novaflare and later became highly synergistic with Sparksy. So if the same thing ends up happening between Sunday and Himiko Nova, then honestly, everything would make perfect sense. Of course, I still need to emphasize that this is entirely personal speculation without any concrete confirmation behind it. Now let's move on to the second character whose inclusion is honestly pretty surprising: Argenti. Unlike Sunday, who has been repeatedly mentioned in previous Novaflare leaks, Argenti is an entirely new name in this discussion. So far, Full Stop Chan is currently the only source claiming that Argenti will receive the 4th Novaflare buff. Even so, if we look at the situation from another perspective, giving Argenti a Novaflare buff actually makes quite a bit of sense. As we already know, Argenti is one of the oldest characters in Honkai starrail. He was originally released back in version 1.5 as the very first limited physical erudition character. He debuted alongside Wawa, where Wawa occupied the Phase 1 banner while Argenti appeared during Phase 2 alongside Silverwolf's rerun. Now, here's the bigger and much more interesting question worth thinking about. With 2 brand new erudition characters arriving in version 4.4, namely Himiko Nova and Rin Tasaka, combined with the possibility of Argenti receiving a Novaflare buff, could Hoyoverse actually be trying to push erudition characters back into the meta again? And honestly, if that's truly the direction they're taking, then that would be extremely interesting. Even so, the only thing we can really do right now is continue following future updates patiently while waiting for additional sources to either confirm or clarify the situation further. So, what do you guys think? Do you trust the information from Raingrace and Sakura Haven more? Or do you think Full Stop Chan's version may actually be the accurate one? And which character do you personally want to receive Novaflare the most? Feel free to share your opinions and speculations down in the comments section below. Alright, with that, we've reached the end of today's discussion. Thank you all so much for your time and attention for watching this video all the way until the end. Don't forget to share this video with your fellow Honkai starrail players so they also won't miss the latest information. Your support through likes and subscriptions truly means a lot to the growth of this channel and helps it continue creating informative content moving forward. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next discussion.